I wanted to make a video seemingly about Liverpool's success in recent times and how, literally the last 6 months, and how that will go into the second half of this season. How, when you look at the stories that are told around this Liverpool side, even compared to the start of the season, they are different. Ipswich felt like somewhat of a cut-off point or somewhat of a change because that was the team we played on the first day of the season. That was a side that challenged us way more than we were challenged by them at Anfield. Now, arguably, when you play at home, you have some great fortune or whatever, and there's that stat that it's like playing with Messi on your team if you play at home. It's like playing down by one player, like Lionel Messi, when you're away from home. That's big. But we absolutely dominated Ipswich, like in a way that I haven't really seen Liverpool do this season. Slott's only note post-game, and he normally gives like a raft of notes post-game, was, oh yeah, we conceded a goal and that was disappointing. And I said that on my own review yesterday, and a few people had a little pop at me for doing that. I think it's nothing to do with whether I'm disappointed. I'm not the person you're trying to impress. But the back line will be disappointed. They want to keep their goals conceded as low as possible. They want to get as many clean sheets as possible for Alisson to get a Golden Glove or whatever it is, even though he can't really this season because he's been injured so much. But you still want to go towards those records, right? You still want to keep as many clean sheets as possible. But that's a smaller point in a much bigger picture here. Liverpool have been through what feels like a transitional period, and are still going through a transitional period, but just a different phase of that transitional period. At the start of the season, you would have definitely called that a transitional period. They were selling players were just getting used to new positions, Liverpool were getting used to new passing patterns and triangles and all these kind of things. We were not sure what the future of quite a few players were. We still aren't sure of those futures, so some of that transition still remains. But the transition now is more based around what we understand Arne Slott's second half of the season to be. We feel, especially on a day like this, further away from the Jurgen Klopp era than we feel close to it now. The emotions that were stirred at that point, the lamenting the grief of some of those players, doesn't feel as heavy as it was at that time. And what a club was worried about going into, to some extent, has been allayed. Some of those fears have been, they have been allayed, I would say. Even though you could argue, well, this might be a new manager bump. I had someone text me the other day and say, I think this is the only title that Arne Slot wins during his era, and from here on out, he's not a success. And I was like, what are you basing that on? He was like, well, you won't have Salah, you won't have Van Dijk, you won't have Trent. And I was like, yeah, but you don't just go down to 8 men when you lose those people. You bring other people in, you change your framing. But what's interesting about that is people are no longer speaking in relation to Klopp. I remember at the start of the season, I was told, stop speaking about Klopp. But I think to some extent, you have to get those elements out your system. Liverpool, when they moved on from Shankly, and this was a big thing at that time, had to tell Shankly to no longer come to the games. They needed a fresh start. They still had players calling him boss, those kind of things. And to an extent, that was the thing that that it still hurts me to think about that, because you think of an old man who just wanted to be around the thing that he loved. But at the same time, Klopp understood that he had to step away at the right time, and he understood that he had, not only for him, but for Liverpool as well. I think it was more for him than it was for Liverpool. I think he felt he'd taken Liverpool as far as he could, etc., etc., etc. But what Liverpool now have feels so different to that Klopp era. And what's weird is we're beginning to see it go full circle, where the more that I watch Slot, the more that I begin to see those little Kloppisms. The start of the season, when things are a little bit more set, a little bit more like I called them myself yesterday in my review, a script that you've learned where you go, well, when the ball comes here, the ball goes there. When I go there, that player will go there, because you're still learning the system. And I know that sounds incredibly reductive of a professional football game system, but you get my point. It's much harder to play this kind of instinctive football at that point. Even Klopp himself referenced this. You play from the gut, I think. It's like gut football. He said from the stomach, but that doesn't quite sound the way, right? Do you have the stomach for it, I guess, is the question in English, right? The phrase still exists. But now you can see players playing a lot more instinctively. Now you can see players playing much more open-mindedly than they were even just a couple of weeks, months ago. They went through that awkward period of other teams beginning to work them out, and the dip in confidence came with that, where other teams were going, go on then, work us out. If you're so good, if you're at the top of the league, we can take pot shots at you. You're vulnerable because you're meant to be so good, and we're the side that we can't really lose this. If we lose, we've lost to the best team in the league. If we win, we've just done something monumental. Liverpool had something to lose for a little while. I felt like they couldn't let go of that. But then it feels again like a corner has been turned. And now comes another corner, I think, in this part of the season. I referenced this the other day. There's some difficult games coming in the next 5-6 games. There is that murderous row, as I think it was what Robbie called it on Arsenal AFTV, where he read out that list of games and said, Liverpool on the other side of this, will see what they're really about. Well, this is another time where I think we will see what Liverpool are really about. We've got 2 more of these actually where we see what Liverpool are really about, because the second half of this season, the 16 games we have in the Premier League, the amount of games we have in the Champions League are huge. And that is where this PSV game, that is where this Bournemouth game, who've gotten good results against all of the other top 4 sides this season and a lot of other big successful teams in the league, they're a big opposition to play. Here's why. Same weekend, Arsenal play City. What is it that can happen that weekend? I know I often say this is all about the order in which you play the games. The order in which you play the games is very important, because then that changes the framing of everything. That changes how many points you are off the top of the league. Even Jarell Quansah in his own interview said it himself, where he was saying, when someone said, oh, do you think about being chased down or whatever it is, he says, we don't frame it like that. We don't think about it like that. That's sports psychology. That's the science of sport, getting people to look at things from a different angle in order to thrive from that perspective, rather than thinking of people hunting you down. But the point is, right, PSV, how heavily will we rotate going into that Bournemouth game? What kind of result do we want going into that Bournemouth game? How dominant do we want to feel in that Champions League? We need 1 point in order to feel that in order to finish top of that group and have a favourable position going into the second set of games. That's dominance, as far as I'm concerned. And that isn't something which just goes overnight, even though City have not shown great form this season. The same goes for the league, right? But I think this Bournemouth game could be, the Ipswich, I think, is a good switch into where we're going next. But I think this Bournemouth game is a massive test for Liverpool. They've just absolutely dominated in the Premier League this weekend, winning 5-0. They've had a series of great results. I think earlier in the season we played them and they felt like there was kind of some form of injustice there. Let me go back and find this Liverpool versus Bournemouth result. I'm actually going to go back through these matches. Where's the Bournemouth game? The Bournemouth game, the Bournemouth game, the Bournemouth game. It's around here somewhere. Come on, not Bologna, Bournemouth. We won 3-0, but at Anfield. And it was against a team that feel like they should have performed better on that day. Bournemouth had quite a few counter-attacks then, but I felt that they were a frustrating team. We got away with it, essentially, is what I'm saying at that point against Bournemouth. And I think a lot of teams are going to come back and play Liverpool in the second half of the season and feel Liverpool got away with it. That's how they're going to frame it. Arsenal, City, all these sides are going to think, did they get away with it? They're going to be reticent of playing Liverpool. They don't want to play a big side. They want to play a side that's top of the league. But also, there are going to be a lot of teams coming with a point to prove, because we've put their nose out of joint earlier on this season, because they feel that Liverpool didn't play them at their best and they now have to play Liverpool at their best. These are all reasons for them to step up, but reasons why, as fans, we also have to step up. Nunez actually scored in that game against Bournemouth, as did, I think, Luis Diaz scored. Yeah, Luis Diaz scored as well. Those are now the 2 competing strikers in this Liverpool side. We don't have someone else like that. Marmoush has gone to City. Jota is almost chronically injured this season at times when we really do need someone else. And that, I guess, is why Slot and Liverpool have chosen to keep things consistent rather than to sell Nunez mid-season or bring someone else in. They want the consistency. They want those training sessions. They want those reps under what it is that Slot has done in this time. But there are other players also coming good in this time that I think we hadn't counted on at the start of the season. And so when we look at it, we aren't thinking of them in that way. We don't think of Cody Gakpo in that way. We don't think of Ryan Gravenberch in that way, or at least we didn't. We don't think of Alexis McAllister contributing with goals, or the goals that Szoboszlai scored even just the other day against Ipswich, right? People and players are reframing their positions and their contributions just because they're getting used to the system. And that That, I think, is something we're kind of overlooking at this point. I saw that especially with the Brentford game. I thought the Brentford game is a bigger turning point. There have been multiple turning points recently, but I thought the Brentford game is a bigger turning point than the Ipswich game. And the Ipswich game was a result of the Brentford game. Because in the Brentford game, we'd gone, this is how we do this. Very late on. And we'd proven to ourselves that we'd lacked belief for the 90, but we still won that game. In other games, when we went 1-0 down, which is very often what's happened very recently for Liverpool, and we've had to play against a low block when 1-0 down, we said, okay, over the 90, we'll wear them down. But we got to 90 minutes, and I think a lot of us were resigned to the fact that Liverpool were going to draw that game, and the likelihood was Arsenal were going to gain points on Liverpool that weekend. So the relief and that moment where Nunez got his hero moment, Chiesa got some contribution, Trent had an assist in there. There was all these narratives combining together to push Liverpool over the line, and suddenly a bunch of negative things that were happening had multiplied to make a positive. As cliched as that sounds, these things do things to the human mind because they feel like core rules of the universe that are combining to make something happen for you. And in Liverpool's coming games, they will build on that momentum. They will build on whatever it is there. I guess when I look through the headlines, especially when I look through a lot of these Liverpool groups, right, I look at how positive most of this framing is. Look at Cody Gakpo's last 6 home games. Real Madrid, Man City, Fulham, all scored 1 goal. Leicester, goal and assist. Manchester United, goal. Ipswich, goal, assist. Szoboszlai has been fantastic. I think a lot of people are saying since Szoboszlai returned from his injury, he's been one of our better, if not one of our more he's MIP, most improved player since last season, right? At least in terms of perception. When you look then at the way that the fans are reacting to some of these results, when you look at people, especially when I look at the subs that came on yesterday for Liverpool, right? Let me look at these subs that came on yesterday for Liverpool. Details of who came on yesterday. Harvey Elliott, a player who is seemingly coming back into this team and said he recently wants to stay at the club. Darwin Nunez came on for Cody Gakpo. Arguably didn't have Liverpool didn't score a goal after these subs, or maybe that's not the point. Watu Endo for Ryan Gravenberch. All 3 of those guys came immediately after Liverpool made it 4-0 and we wanted to lock the game down. Jayden Danns came on for McAllister. This is another one of those things I really want to talk about and I've kind of spoken about it in 1 or 2 videos, but I will talk about it in a second. And then Chiesa for Diaz. Chiesa for Diaz is a like for like, but Danns for McAllister is a sub that Arne Slot really enjoys to make at the moment. It's a shape-changing sub. It's a sub which, first of all, changes personnel. That's so different in the emphasis where that player is going, even though previously, again, Harvey Elliott for Szoboszlai, like for like. Nunez for Gakpo, like for like. And Wataru for like for like. Danns for McAllister, emphasis change, shift in where things are going. If you got Nunez and Danns on the field, where are both those guys playing? That means Nunez is playing out on the wing essentially for Liverpool at that point, right? Especially when you look at where Nunez inhabited within this game. All of these are like game-changing, and I'm just going to show that for a second, game-changing changes. Yeah, no shit, Laurence, well done. But that's not the point. Nunez was playing through the centre, but you would have anticipated that he would play out on the right for Liverpool at that point, out on the left, sorry, for Liverpool at that point when Danns came on. Now, arguably Danns came on at 80 minutes and didn't really have that many contributions to the game. But what I mean by saying that is he brought on these 2 guys at the same time. What is it that changed? What shape change did Liverpool then have? Does that mean that Nunez is having this shift for Liverpool where he isn't just about being a striker in all these games? He's actually learning to be a closer striker. Is it that? And what I mean by that is someone who comes on and essentially helps Liverpool defensively, has touches all over the field like he normally does, and becomes more of a central midfielder, which is why that conversation came in earlier this season. These are shape-shifting elements that I don't think we really acknowledge a lot in a lot of Slot's play. It's easy to say, oh, he made these changes and won this, and it seemed very obvious after the game. But those minor reads, those minor shifts, those minor changes that Klopp made before weren't as easy to interpret as the ones that Slot makes. Slot seemingly has a way of speaking to the players which makes it easy for them to understand where it is that they are then asked to play or where they are then asked to do their job, which didn't feel as clear before under Klopp. These are all changes that make a big difference to a team and a squad and a bunch of players who I think will have felt the difference in Slot's methods and the way that he expresses them to the players. But on top of that, we'll know Slot normally kicks on in the second half of the season. So if you thought that was good earlier, there are a bunch of teams who are coming to play Liverpool and prove things well, what have Liverpool got to prove in the second half of the season? What's Liverpool's approach to that game? It's certainly not one of cowardice. It's certainly not one of cowering away from a bunch of teams that we know want to come and shoot one at us. It's literally, right, well, if they're going to come at us, then that leaves gaps for us. The reframing that Slot does of all these narratives is so smart and is so sports psychology based that I think as fans we can do nothing but lean into that, especially when it's paid dividends against Brentford, Ipswich, a number of sides after that little dip, which I think a lot of people said was an endemic problem for Liverpool, which was just going to go on and on and on and be a death spiral to the end of the season. That's not been the case. Expect more bumps like that. Expect more people to try to hit Liverpool like that. Because every time that Liverpool have a bad result, because of their consistency, because of the expectation that Slot and Pep and everyone else has set of previous years, they cannot go out there and just lose. These things become binary. Arsenal fans jump on that. City fans jump on that with 12 points difference between us and them. 12 points difference is, we've been able to bridge that gap before in the Premier League. All of these things are narratives that will get thrown out. I'm just trying to name some of them before they come out so that we anticipate them and go, oh yeah, I told you that you were going to say that. I like what this does to a finger. Look at that. That's cool. Look at that. See? Anyway, I appreciate you guys listening. I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you get the framing and the key week that's coming up against PSV. What team would you start versus PSV? Leave it down there and I'll include it in my preview. How would you approach how much would you approach Brentmouth? And how do you approach the week after that, which I think is a big one because that is the first competition we can really go out of. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below and I will chat to you in a little while. Much love.